The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the base, casting long shadows over the runway. Heat shimmered in the air like liquid gold, rising off the tarmac and warping the edges of the sleek F-22s lined up like silver predators. Staff Sergeant Lily, Falcon-Six, Martinez leaned against the side of a maintenance truck, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of a grease-stained hand. The acrid scent of jet fuel and engine oil clung to her uniform, a familiar perfume she had learned to wear like armor. Her boots scuffed the cracked concrete as she checked the Apache's hydraulics one last time, the rhythmic click of metal parts echoing in the silence before the storm. She had been a mechanic for nearly 8 years, and everyone knew her call sign, Falcon-Six. It wasn't just a nickname. It was a legend whispered among pilots and ground crews alike. She had a gift for coaxing life out of machines, for turning broken metal into soaring birds of war. But today, something felt different. The air was charged with an energy that made her skin tingle, a subtle vibration in her chest that didn't belong to the engines. Then a crackle over the radio shattered the tension. "Any Apache pilot on base?" The voice was frantic, nearly trembling with desperation. The static buzzed like an electric jolt through her headset and she froze. That kind of call didn't come in lightly. Somewhere, someone was in real trouble. She scanned the horizon, her brown eyes narrowing as she tracked the faint heat signature of a helicopter over the distant mountains. It was small, almost imperceptible, but the movement was deliberate and unmistakably human. Her pulse spiked. Memories flashed unbidden across her mind. Her first combat mission, the roar of enemy fire, the weight of responsibility crushing her chest as she realized lives depended on her skill and speed. And now, someone else was in that exact position. "Falcon-Six," the radio buzzed again, this time tinged with disbelief. "Did you hear that?" A voice, clipped and authoritative, came from one of the F-22 pilots monitoring the base frequency. Their tone was incredulous. How could a ground mechanic, someone who had never flown in combat, respond to a desperate call like this? Lily took a deep breath, the wind kicking up dust around her. Her hands instinctively reached for the controls she had memorized by touch over countless late nights. She had studied every manual, every emergency protocol, every scenario a pilot might face. But nothing could truly prepare a person for being called into the fray in real life. The sound of engines flared behind her as 2 F-22s streaked across the sky, their sleek bodies cutting through the heat like knives. The base commander's voice boomed over the intercom. "Falcon-Six, you're cleared for immediate response. Situation is critical." The word critical carried weight, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on her shoulders. Lily's stomach twisted, a cocktail of adrenaline and fear. She had never piloted an Apache in combat before. Her experience was limited to simulators and controlled drills, but there was no time for hesitation. Somewhere out there, a pilot was trapped, pinned by enemy fire, and the seconds ticking away could be the difference between life and death. She climbed into the cockpit with a practiced fluidity that belied her nerves, strapping in tightly, her fingers dancing across the panels, testing the response of every instrument. The smell of oil and metal filled the cabin, a reminder of the countless hours she had spent tending to machines that could mean life or death in the right hands. The first crackle of enemy gunfire came from the canyon below, sharp and terrifying against the hum of her engines. The Apache shuddered under her touch, and Lily adjusted the throttle with a precision born of instinct. She had memorized every angle, every maneuver, every evasive tactic, not because she had to, but because she had always believed in being ready for the impossible. Her eyes darted to the canyon mouth ahead. Dust spiraled up from the scorched earth where the helicopter had taken cover. She could just make out the silhouette of a downed pilot, crouched and shaking, trying to stay hidden. The F-22s, following from above, hesitated as if unsure whether to intervene. They weren't accustomed to a ground mechanic leading an extraction, and Lily could feel their skepticism through the tension on the radio. "Falcon-Six, proceed with caution," one pilot finally muttered. The hesitation in his voice betrayed their disbelief, but also a flicker of hope. Hope that somehow, someway, she could do the impossible. Lily swallowed hard, her throat dry. Hope alone wasn't enough, she had to act. The canyon walls loomed closer, jagged rocks rising like teeth. Enemy fire rattled against the Apache, the metallic clang of bullets sparking against reinforced armor. Dust and smoke swirled around her as she maneuvered with increasing urgency. Every instinct screamed at her to go faster, to fly smarter, to protect the life teetering below. The radio buzzed again, this time panic lacing the transmission. "Pilot is pinned. They're hitting him hard." Lily's jaw tightened. Her heart raced, adrenaline coursing like wildfire. She adjusted her aim, aligning the Apache's guns to provide suppressive fire. Sparks danced along the canyon walls as rounds ricocheted dangerously close. "Falcon-Six, you're clear to engage," the commander's voice instructed, taut with tension. This was no longer just a test of skill, it was a crucible, a measure of courage under fire. Every second stretched into eternity. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down, the invisible eyes of the F-22 pilots, the trapped pilot, and the entire base watching her every move. Lily's hands moved with precision, almost mechanically, as she executed maneuvers that should have been impossible for someone with no formal combat flight experience. Her mind calculated trajectories, angles, and timing in an instant. Dust, smoke, and enemy fire swirled into a chaotic symphony of danger around her. Then, as she aligned the Apache for the first approach toward the trapped pilot, a sudden jolt shook the helicopter. Rocks tumbled down the canyon walls as if the very earth were trying to prevent her from reaching her goal. The radio fell silent for a heartbeat, amplifying the deafening roar of her own engines. She took a deep breath, centering herself, her eyes locking onto the pilot below. The F-22s held back, hovering like hesitant guardians above. And then, in the thick, tense air, Lily's voice cut through the radio with calm authority, despite the chaos around her. "Falcon-Six has visual, initiating rescue." Silence followed her words. The canyon seemed to hold its breath. The F-22 pilots froze, awe and disbelief flashing across their faces behind their helmets. How could a mechanic, a woman who had never flown in combat, execute a mission like this under fire? And yet Lily moved forward. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and it could all end in fire and ruin. But she had no choice. Someone's life depended on her. And as the Apache descended into the shadowed canyon, the world seemed to shrink to the narrow space between life and death, between fear and courage. And in that instant, the desert held its breath, waiting to see if Falcon-Six could pull off the impossible. The F-22s hovered above the canyon, engines roaring in a near-perfect synchronization that belied the tension within their cockpits. Pilots Major Connor, Hawk, Reynolds, and Lieutenant Jace, Viper, Lynn exchanged glances over their headsets, unspoken questions hanging in the air. They had trained for countless combat scenarios, drills, and simulations, but nothing prepared them for this. Nothing prepared them for a ground mechanic, responding to a desperate distress call, and stepping into the cockpit of a fully armed Apache helicopter. "Falcon-Six," Hawk muttered, voice low and incredulous. Did she just respond?" Viper's jaw tightened. "She's serious. That's the mechanic they're talking about." The words made Hawk's gut churn. He knew the stories, the legends whispered through the ranks, how Lily Martinez could coax life out of the deadliest machinery, how her hands had saved aircraft that others had written off. But a ground tech piloting an Apache in a live combat situation, it was unthinkable. And yet the radio crackled again, confirming what their eyes already knew. She was moving. Far below, the canyon walls stretched like the jaws of a metallic beast, jagged and merciless. Dust spiraled from the scorched earth as Lily maneuvered the Apache with a fluid grace that defied logic. The sun glinted off the rotor blades, casting flickering shadows over the rocks. Bullets traced arcs through the air, clanging against armor and ricocheting into clouds of stone dust. Every movement of the helicopter demanded precision. One wrong angle, one miscalculation, and the rotor could shred the canyon walls, or worse, her own body. The trapped pilot, Corporal James Sparks O'Neill, crouched behind a rock, eyes wide with fear. His hands shook as he gripped his weapon, but he barely dared breathe. Above him, Lily's Apache swooped and twisted, dodging sniper fire with uncanny agility. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the smell of scorched metal stung Sparks' nostrils. His mind struggled to comprehend what was happening. A mechanic, someone who fixed planes, not flew them, was now performing evasive maneuvers worthy of an elite pilot. "Falcon-Six, this is Viper. Hold steady," the F-22 pilot's voice urged over the comm. "We've got your 6, but you're on your own down there." Lily's fingers tightened on the controls. "Copy that. Engaging now." Her voice was calm, controlled, but adrenaline throbbed through her veins like live wires. She adjusted the throttle, the rotors whining as she banked sharply, the Apache almost grazing the canyon wall. Sparks instinctively ducked as rock chips rained down, his heart hammering. Then from the far side of the canyon, a volley of gunfire erupted. Tracer rounds lit the canyon like a deadly fireworks display, some ricocheting off her helicopter, sending sparks flying across the cockpit. Lily twisted and tilted the Apache with flawless precision, each motion calculated to shield sparks while keeping the aircraft stable. Her mind raced. She had never encountered live enemy fire before, and yet her hands acted with a terrifying confidence, honed from years of maintenance and intimate knowledge of aircraft mechanics. She knew every weight distribution, every rotor response, every vulnerable point. Above her, the F-22s followed, but cautiously. They were trained for dogfights, air superiority, intercepts, but never to rely on a single mechanic to turn the tide on the ground. Hawk tightened his jaw. She's actually doing it," he muttered. Viper nodded silently, eyes glued to his HUD as he monitored the situation. The canyon's narrow angles made engagement impossible for them without risking the trapped pilot. They could only watch. Suddenly, Lily spotted a shadow flit along the canyon wall, a sniper. She banked hard to bring the Apache's gunner system into alignment, her fingers flying over the targeting controls. The sniper fired again, and a round whizzed dangerously close, clipping a rotor blade. Sparks' body slammed against the rock as debris rained down. "Almost got him," Lily muttered under her breath. Come on, come on." The F-22 pilots exchanged anxious looks. Hawk whispered, "She's alive, she's really alive." The term alive carried more weight than they could articulate. In every exercise, in every training module, they had been taught to rely on calculated, controlled responses, not miracles. And yet, here was Lily Martinez, bending the impossible into reality. The canyon narrowed further. Dust and smoke created a blinding haze. Lily squinted through the windshield, tracking Sparks' position below. Her heart pounded, every nerve screaming, but her movements remained precise. She twisted the throttle, dipped the tail, and executed a near-impossible hover directly above him. The rotor's wash stirred up a miniature sandstorm, whipping Sparks' hair and clothes into a frenzy. And then the canyon seemed to come alive. More enemy figures appeared from crevices, rifles raised, their intent clear. Lily's eyes narrowed. She had no choice. Every second wasted increased the risk to Sparks. The F-22s above tensed, ready to intervene, but Hawk knew any direct engagement could hit the wrong target. This was her fight. "Falcon-Six, you've got this," Viper's voice urged, though it was tinged with awe. With a deep breath, Lily adjusted her position. The Apache's guns roared, bullets streaking across the canyon, suppressing the enemy's advance just enough for Sparks to scramble toward the edge. Rocks and dust collided with her rotors, shaking the helicopter violently, but she didn't flinch. Her mind was singularly focused: extraction. For a fleeting moment the canyon fell silent. The chaos paused as Sparks looked up at her hovering Apache. In his eyes was disbelief, fear, and a glimmer of hope. The world felt suspended, as if waiting to see if the improbable could survive. Then a low rumble beneath the surface of the canyon warned of danger yet to come. A massive landslide had begun, jagged rocks tumbling toward them like rolling death. Sparks froze, paralyzed by the enormity of what was falling, while Lily's instincts screamed. She twisted the Apache sharply, narrowly avoiding the falling debris, but her heart leapt into her throat. One miscalculation, one delayed response, and it would all be over. The F-22s above froze mid-flight, engines whining in hesitation, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Their training, their calculations, their entire military careers had not prepared them for this. A mechanic, a ground tech, was rewriting the rules of the battlefield, and the canyon itself seemed to bow in awe. "Falcon-Six," Hawk whispered, barely audible. "WWE can't believe this." But there was no time for disbelief. Lily's eyes remained locked on Sparks, her fingers dancing over the controls, readying for the final approach. The enemy hadn't given up yet, and the canyon's treacherous walls still threatened to claim them all. Every heartbeat, every rotor rotation, every flicker of motion mattered. And then, just as the first sweep of extraction began, a shadow appeared at the canyon's edge, something larger, darker, and more menacing than they had anticipated. Lily's breath caught. The F-22s froze, their pilots, hands gripping their controls as awe, fear, and curiosity held them captive. For the first time, the impossible seemed poised to collide with reality. The canyon walls loomed like jagged teeth, casting long shadows over the scorched earth below. The air was thick with dust, smoke, and the acrid tang of gunpowder. Every heartbeat felt amplified in Lily Falcon-Six, Martinez's chest, as she guided the Apache into the narrow corridor with precision that defied belief. Each twist of the rotor sent rocks tumbling. Each tilt of the cockpit threatened to scrape her metal skin against the canyon walls. Sparks, crouched beneath a jagged boulder, could only watch in awe and terror as she danced the line between control and chaos. Enemy fire continued to rain down, tracer rounds slicing through the haze like angry red streaks of lightning. Lily's hands were steady, almost eerily calm, moving over the controls as if she were born to fly. Years of working on machines had taught her to feel their responses, anticipate their reactions, and coax life from their stubborn metal frames. And now, every instinct, every ounce of knowledge was being put to the ultimate test. Above her, the F-22s hovered like wary predators. Hawk and Viper exchanged glances over their HUDs, their disbelief palpable. Their training told them this shouldn't be possible. A mechanic, a ground technician, piloting an Apache under live fire and executing maneuvers that even seasoned pilots would hesitate to attempt. Yet there she was, carving a path through the canyon, her machine twisting and turning with grace and deadly precision. The trapped pilot, Sparks, glanced up as Lily maneuvered closer. Fear contorted his face, but beneath it was a glimmer of hope. "She's doing it," he whispered to himself, clutching his weapon so tightly his knuckles turned white. The roar of the rotors above his head created a windstorm, whipping sand and debris around him, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to this small, deadly corridor of rock and fire. "Falcon-Six, you're approaching the pickup point," Viper's voice crackled over the radio. "Steady, you've got eyes on him." "Visual," Lily replied, her voice a calm anchor in the storm. Her gaze never left Sparks. She adjusted the throttle, dipped the tail, and angled the Apache just right to counter the gusts of wind and debris. A sudden explosion erupted from the canyon wall to her left. A hidden enemy mortar had detonated, sending shards of rock spraying across her path. The Apache shuddered violently, and Lily's stomach lurched, but she kept control. 1 inch too close, and the rotors would tear through the canyon walls. 1 inch too far, and Sparks would be out of reach. The F-22s followed above, careful not to engage directly. Every move was calculated, measured, and silent approval whispered through their hand signals and HUD readouts. They were watching history unfold. Above all, they knew they couldn't interfere directly. The risk to Sparks was too high. The canyon itself was a labyrinth of danger, and only Falcon-Six could navigate it. Lily's mind raced, calculating distances, anticipating wind gusts, compensating for the Apache's weight and tracking enemy fire. Every instinct screamed at her to move faster, but speed without precision would be fatal. The first approach brought her directly above Sparks. She hovered just long enough for him to scramble to his feet, shielding himself against the sandstorm whipped up by her rotors. Then came the real test. From the canyon's far side, a sniper emerged, moving with deadly precision. Lily's fingers flew over the controls, engaging countermeasures while keeping the helicopter steady. The sniper fired, and a bullet clipped the Apache's armor, sending sparks dancing across the cockpit. The vehicle shuddered violently. Sparks ducked instinctively, heart hammering. "Hold steady," Lily shouted into the headset. "I've got this." Her focus narrowed to a razor-sharp point, her body operating on pure instinct. Years of working with machines, reading their responses, anticipating their behavior, it all culminated in this single moment. She tilted, banked, and twisted the Apache, dodging the sniper's line of fire with millimeter precision. Dust and debris swirled around her, and the canyon seemed to close in, threatening to swallow them all. Sparks edged closer to the pickup point, crawling over rocks with trembling hands. Another volley of enemy fire rang out. Lily's eyes darted to the canyon walls, calculating the next movement, predicting every threat. She released a stream of suppressive fire from the Apache's guns, forcing the sniper to retreat momentarily. Sparks crawled forward, closer to salvation, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. Above, Hawk's jaw was tight behind his helmet. "She's alive, she's really alive," he muttered. Viper nodded silently, all mixed with terror in his eyes. Neither of them could comprehend the sheer audacity of what they were witnessing. A mechanic in the middle of a live firefight, maneuvering a helicopter like a seasoned combat pilot, rescuing a downed comrade. It defied logic, and yet it was happening. The canyon narrowed further, the walls jagged and unpredictable. One wrong turn could mean disaster. Lily's pulse raced, but her hands moved with a calm fluidity, guiding the Apache through a deadly ballet. Sparks reached the edge, his arms straining to grasp the Apache's side ladder. The rotors whirred above him, wind whipping sand into his eyes, but Lily held the Apache steady. One more movement, just a fraction of an inch, and he would be safe. Then, a massive boulder tumbled from the canyon's upper lip, kicked loose by the chaos below. Lily reacted instantly, banking the Apache hard to the side, narrowly avoiding a catastrophic collision. Sparks yelped as debris rained around him. The F-22s above tilted in shock, watching as she compensated with a maneuver that no pilot in their training would have dared attempt. For a brief, suspended moment, the canyon fell silent. Dust hung in the air like fog, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Sparks climbed into the Apache, finally safe from the enemy's immediate fire. His eyes met Lily through the windshield, and he mouthed a wordless thank you, disbelief etched across his face. But the danger wasn't over. A low rumble vibrated through the canyon floor. More enemy combatants emerged, moving to intercept them at the canyon mouth. Lily's grip on the controls tightened, every muscle in her body coiled with tension. Above, the F-22 pilots watched in stunned silence, their disbelief turning into awe and unease. Falcon-Six wasn't just a mechanic. She was a force of nature. The canyon had become a crucible of fire, dust, and metal. One misstep, one misjudgment could end in disaster. And yet, Lily pressed on, guided by instinct, skill, and sheer determination. The Apache's rotors sliced through the swirling dust, the roar of the engines echoing off the canyon walls like a predator's growl. Then from the far end of the canyon, a shadow loomed, a massive figure moving faster than anticipated. Lily's heart skipped a beat. The F-22s froze mid-flight, engines whining in hesitation. Something, or someone, was waiting for them, and this time the threat was bigger than any sniper or gunfire. The canyon trembled. Dust cascaded down its jagged walls, and Falcon-Six, eyes narrowed, Apache poised for action, knew that the next seconds would define everything. The roar of the Apache's rotors shook the canyon like a living beast. Dust and debris spiraled violently, blinding and choking, while the smell of scorched earth and gunpowder clung to the air. Sparks struggled to stay upright, his hands gripping the jagged rock as another volley of tracer fire whistled past. Every second was life or death, and he knew it. Above him, the Apache's shadow danced across the canyon floor, moving with a terrifying grace that seemed almost impossible for a single pilot. Lily Falcon-Six Martinez adjusted the throttle, banking the Apache at an impossible angle, blades slicing through the smoky haze. She could feel the machine responding to her every thought, every instinct honed over years of maintenance, every emergency protocol she had memorized by heart. The helicopter tilted sharply, dodging enemy fire, narrowly avoiding jagged rocks that seemed determined to swallow her. Every motion demanded perfection. One miscalculation, one lapse, and they would all be lost. From above, the two F-22s circled cautiously, their pilots tense and silent. Major Hawk Reynolds' eyes were wide behind his visor. I can't believe she's actually doing it," he muttered to Viper. "She's not supposed to be in that cockpit. She's a mechanic, not a combat pilot." Viper nodded, tension tightening his jaw. "She's rewriting the rules, and the canyon, it's feeding off her audacity." Sparks inched closer to the pickup zone, keeping his head low as bullets kicked up sand around him. He tried to steady his breathing, but adrenaline shook his entire body. Come on," he whispered, reaching toward the Apache. The downdraft from the rotors threatened to knock him off balance, but he clung on, trusting the hovering giant above him. The enemy wasn't idle. Snipers and ground troops had formed a deadly perimeter around the extraction point, their rifles aimed with chilling precision. Another round zipped past Sparks' shoulder, sending him sprawling. The canyon echoed with the thunderous noise of gunfire and rotor blades, smoke curling up like black tendrils against the jagged walls. "Hold steady," Lily's calm, commanding voice cut through the chaos over the headset. Her eyes never left Sparks, her hands moving with the fluidity of a dancer. She rotated the Apache, adjusting the angle to compensate for the wind and debris, deploying countermeasures against incoming fire. Sparks felt the vibration of the machine through the soles of his boots, the ground trembling beneath him. "Almost there," she whispered under her breath, as if saying it to herself would anchor reality. The first attempt brought Sparks within reach. He scrambled toward the ladder, hand outstretched. A sniper fired again, and a bullet ricocheted off the rotor guard, sending Sparks flying across the cockpit. Lily's heart leapt into her throat, but her fingers responded instinctively, tilting and banking the Apache, dodging another deadly projectile by inches. From the canyon cliffs, a massive boulder tumbled, kicked loose by the gunfire and rotor wash. Lily reacted instantly, spinning the Apache away from the falling rock while keeping it steady enough for Sparks to grasp the side ladder. The boulder crashed into the canyon floor below with a deafening boom, sending a wave of dust and rock fragments that obscured the enemy's line of sight for a fleeting moment. Sparks finally grasped the ladder, muscles screaming with the effort. "I'm in," he shouted, gripping tightly as he climbed into the Apache. Lily's eyes never wavered, watching him with unwavering focus as she maintained control, twisting and tilting the helicopter through the canyon like it was an extension of her own body. Above, Hawk and Viper exchanged stunned looks. "She's actually getting him out," Hawk breathed. I don't know whether to be terrified or impressed." Viper's voice was tight. "Both. Absolutely both." The F-22s adjusted their formation, prepared to engage enemy reinforcements but careful not to endanger the delicate extraction. But the enemy wasn't finished. From the canyon entrance, more soldiers emerged, weapons raised, moving to cut off their escape. Lily's eyes narrowed. There was no hesitation. This was now a full-scale rescue under fire. Her mind calculated angles, distances, wind gusts, and the helicopter's momentum in a single, fluid motion. She fired suppressive rounds, each shot precise, each maneuver countering threats as they emerged. Sparks clambered inside, shaking, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. You're insane," he gasped, gripping the seat as the rotors continued their furious beat. How are you even how? I don't have time for explanations. Lily snapped over the roar of the engines, her voice calm but edged with urgency. Hold on. The canyon seemed to fight them at every turn. Jagged rocks jutted out like teeth, enemy fire crackled unpredictably, and the ground seemed alive with danger. Yet somehow, Lily navigated the maze with a mix of instinct, courage, and sheer audacity. The Apache twisted, dipped, and swung, dodging death at every turn. Above, the F-22s held back, their weapons primed but restrained. Hawk whispered, "I've never seen anything like this, not in training, not in combat. She's rewriting what's possible." Viper nodded grimly, his eyes locked on the unfolding drama below. And then the canyon walls shuddered. A low rumble vibrated through the ground as if the canyon itself were reacting to the chaos within. Dust cascaded from the cliffs above, and the enemy soldiers faltered, instinctively retreating from the shifting terrain. Lily seized the moment, banking the Apache sharply, thrusting forward and guiding Sparks toward the narrow exit. Just as they approached the canyon mouth, another enemy sniper appeared, aiming directly at Sparks. Lily's hands moved instinctively, rotating the Apache while deploying countermeasures, the roar of the rotors blending with the crack of gunfire. Sparks's heart slammed in his chest as he clung to the ladder, the helicopter swaying dangerously but steady enough to keep him alive. Then, as they cleared the canyon, the world seemed to expand again. Open desert stretched ahead, but danger was far from over. Enemy reinforcements moved to intercept them across the flats, and the F-22 pilots above braced for a fight. Lily exhaled, a single sharp breath she hadn't allowed herself during the tension-filled descent. Sparks' eyes met hers through the cockpit glass, wide with shock, relief, and gratitude. "Falcon-Six," he whispered almost reverently. "You saved me." Her hands tightened on the controls, eyes scanning the horizon. There was no time for relief. The canyon behind them was a maelstrom of smoke, dust, and echoes, and the battle was far from over. The rescue was only the beginning. Above, the F-22 pilots hovered silently, engines whining in disbelief. "Falcon-Six," Hawk muttered. "We underestimated her." Viper's voice was a low murmur of awe. "We thought she was just a mechanic, now she's a legend." And as the Apache lifted fully into the open desert, dust swirling around them like a storm, Lily knew the fight was not yet done. Enemy forces still lurked ahead, and the canyon had not released its final challenge. But for now, she had one passenger safe, one mission underway, and the world, at least for a moment, was hers to command. The comm crackled again, a single line breaking through the static. "Falcon-Six, do you copy?" She gripped the controls tighter, eyes forward, adrenaline surging. "I copy, and we're not done yet." The desert sun blazed overhead, the wind whipped around them, and the roar of rotors carried them toward the next impossible moment. The open desert stretched ahead, deceptively calm after the chaos of the canyon, but Lily Falcon-Six Martinez knew better. Danger lingered in every shimmer of heat waves rising from the scorched earth, every distant dust swirl hinting at enemy movement. Sparks clung to the side of the Apache, shaking from adrenaline, his wide eyes darting across the horizon. He tried to speak, but the roar of the rotors swallowed his words. "Stay focused," Lily barked over the comm, her eyes scanning every inch of the terrain. Every shadow could hide a sniper, every ridge could conceal an enemy combatant. Her hands gripped the controls, responding with a precision that had become instinct. The F-22s followed from above, engines whining but remained cautious, unable to intervene without risking the safety of the helicopter and the pilot she had just rescued. The first sniper appeared suddenly, perched atop a ridge with uncanny stillness. His rifle glinted in the sun as he took aim. Lily reacted instantly, banking the Apache sharply, forcing a gust of wind and sand at the enemy's position. A hail of bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the armor, but the threat was real, deadly, and close. Sparks ducked instinctively, heart hammering. "Got visual," Lily shouted. Her finger hovered over the trigger as she rotated the Apache's gunner system toward the sniper. A precise stream of suppressive fire erupted, forcing him to drop behind the ridge. The canyon's chaos had been a warning, but the desert's openness left no margin for error. Every maneuver, every tilt of the helicopter had to be calculated. "Falcon-Six, you're clear for engagement," Hawk's voice crackled through the comm, but his tone was wary. The F-22s were designed for air superiority, not close-quarters support over hostile desert terrain. They hovered above, keeping visual contact, but Lily knew the real danger was her own immediate vicinity. Enemy forces were already regrouping. Dust plumes in the distance hinted at reinforcements moving fast, cutting off escape routes. Lily's mind raced, calculating distances, angles, and enemy trajectories with split-second precision. She dipped the Apache low, the rotors whipping up sand and debris in a blinding storm. Sparks clung tightly, gripping every handle he could find, feeling the vibration of the machine through his bones. Another sniper emerged from the rocky outcroppings, weapon aimed with deadly accuracy. Lily twisted the controls, narrowly avoiding a lethal shot. The Apache shuddered under the wind shear, but she maintained balance. One miscalculation, 1 second too long, and Sparks would be lost. "Hang on," she shouted, even as she deployed countermeasures that sent smoke trails into the air, confusing enemy targeting. Sparks felt the heat of bullets slicing past, the roar of rotors nearly deafening, and yet a strange calm anchored him. Falcon-Six was in control, and that gave him a chance. Above, the F-22s shifted formation. Hawk's hands hovered over the throttle, fingers tense. "She's dodging sniper fire that would have shredded any regular pilot," he muttered. Viper nodded silently, his jaw tight. "Every move she makes calculated, unbelievable." They had trained for this, planned for it, and yet she surpassed every metric, every expectation. The Apache's guns erupted again, suppressive fire forcing the snipers back. Dust and sand cascaded across the desert, turning visibility into a blur of gray and gold. Sparks' eyes stung, and he swallowed hard, trying to keep his panic in check. Every second that passed brought him closer to safety, or closer to disaster. But then the real danger arrived. From a distant ridge, enemy reinforcements charged, moving fast and methodically, cutting off possible escape paths. Lily's breath caught. There were too many of them, and they were converging quickly. The Apache's agility would only last so long. Her mind raced for options, each one riskier than the last. "Falcon-Six, you need to move." Hawk's voice was urgent now, cutting through the roar of the rotors. "They're converging. You've got to get Sparks out of there." "I know," Lily snapped back, voice calm but strained. Her fingers danced across the controls, adjusting throttle, tilt, and rotor angle in a fluid rhythm born of instinct. She banked sharply, dodging a volley of gunfire, sending a plume of sand and debris toward the enemy positions. Sparks held on tightly, eyes wide as the ground dropped beneath him, a blur of rocks and dust. The snipers had regrouped, moving in tandem with the infantry advancing from the ridges. One shot, one lapse, could bring the mission to an abrupt end. Lily knew it. She adjusted her approach, guiding the Apache to a narrow natural corridor between two rock formations. The walls were close enough to scrape the rotors if she misjudged, but they offered cover from direct enemy fire. Sparks inched closer to the Apache's cabin, muscles trembling from fear and exhaustion. Another round whipped past him, throwing sand into his face. Lily tilted the Apache, angling her body between him and the enemy as she deployed a short burst of machine gun fire, forcing them to duck behind cover. Above, Hawk and Viper held their formation, unable to intervene directly. Hawk's voice was tight. "If she makes it out of this canyon, she's going to be a legend." Viper's eyes were locked on the unfolding chaos. "She already is. No pilot I've ever trained with could pull this off." The Apache swerved suddenly, narrowly avoiding a sniper's line of fire. Lily's heart pounded, but her mind was focused entirely on Sparks and the extraction. She hovered just long enough for him to climb the ladder and into the cabin. Sparks' hands shook violently as he latched onto the interior, finally free of the desert's immediate threat. But escape wasn't guaranteed. The reinforcements had closed the distance, and the Apache's rotors kicked up clouds of dust, drawing attention. Lily's mind raced. She had to navigate through the approaching enemy while keeping the helicopter stable enough to protect Sparks. One wrong move could throw them both into the line of fire. She banked the Apache sharply, dodging a volley of gunfire, her body tensing with every twist and turn. Sparks clung to the cabin, wide-eyed, realizing that their safety was entirely in her hands. Dust, debris, and tracer fire whirled around them in a chaotic storm. Above, the F-22s followed, engines screaming but held back, witnessing what no one could have expected. A mechanic defying every expectation, controlling life and death with her hands and instincts alone. Then the desert seemed to hold its breath. The snipers and enemy reinforcements paused for a split second, recalculating. And in that instant, Lily saw the opening she needed. One precise maneuver, a sudden dip and bank, would give them enough distance to escape. "Hold on," she shouted. The Apache twisted through the opening like a blade cutting through sand. Bullets and debris whizzed past, but Sparks was safe. The snipers scrambled, unable to follow the impossible trajectory. For the first time, a moment of clarity fell over the chaos. Sparks' chest heaved with relief, eyes wide with awe. You saved me," he whispered, barely audible over the rotors. Lily didn't answer. Her focus was already on the next challenge, enemy reinforcements waiting beyond the canyon. But for now, one life had been saved. One impossible mission had succeeded. Above, Hawk exhaled, almost in disbelief. "Falcon-Six, she did it," he muttered. Viper nodded, his jaw tight. "We've underestimated her, big time." The Apache surged forward, cutting through the desert heat, rotors slicing the air, carrying Lily and Sparks toward the next battle. The canyon behind them fell silent, dust settling like a curtain. But the desert ahead was alive, and danger was far from over. The radio crackled once more, tense and urgent. "Falcon-Six, enemy reinforcements inbound. You've got company." Lily tightened her grip on the controls, eyes narrowing. "I copy," she whispered, adrenaline and determination surging through her veins. "Let's finish this." Desert stretched endlessly ahead, but it was far from empty. From the ridges and dunes, shadows moved, too coordinated, too deliberate to be anything but enemy reinforcements. Dust spiraled around them, kicked up by the advancing soldiers, rifles glinting in the harsh sun. Lily Falcon-Six, Martinez gripped the Apache's controls, her knuckles white. Sparks, still clinging to the cabin, felt the helicopter shudder with every sudden twist and tilt. Above them, the F-22s roared in formation. Hawk and Viper had finally coordinated a plan to suppress enemy fire while giving Lily room to maneuver. But even with their advanced firepower, the canyon's exit and desert approaches were treacherous. One miscalculation, 1 second too slow, and the reinforcements would cut them off. "Falcon-Six, they're moving faster than expected," Viper's voice crackled. "You need to adjust your vector now." "I see them," Lily replied, scanning the horizon with razor focus. Her heart pounded, adrenaline coursing like liquid fire through her veins. Years of experience maintaining aircraft had taught her the subtle nuances of every engine, every rotor response. Now, that knowledge was the only thing keeping them alive. The reinforcements were smart, moving in coordinated waves to encircle their path. Bullets streaked past, clipping rocks and igniting sparks in the desert air. Sparks crouched, heart hammering. We're not gonna make it," he gasped, voice raw with panic. "Yes, we are," Lily said, teeth gritted. Her calm tone masked the storm inside her. She adjusted the Apache's pitch and yaw, banking sharply, rotors whipping dust in blinding clouds. Every maneuver was calculated. A dip here, a tilt there, suppressive fire from the helicopter's guns to keep enemies at bay. Hawk tightened his grip on the throttle above, eyes scanning the advancing forces. Falcon-Six, you've got a narrow window to break their formation. We can't hold them all off for long. Lily's gaze flicked to Sparks, gripping the cabin interior. He was breathing hard, sweat stinging his eyes. She felt the weight of responsibility like a physical force pressing down on her shoulders. "I know, just keep them off us," she muttered. The Apache surged forward, rotors slicing the desert air, creating a hurricane of dust and sand. Sparks' stomach lurched as they veered sharply, narrowly avoiding a volley of fire. The reinforcements were relentless, pushing forward with precision, their strategy designed to corner and destroy. But Lily's instincts, honed from years of coaxing stubborn machines into peak performance, allowed her to anticipate and counter every movement. From above, Hawk and Viper unleashed controlled bursts of fire, strafing enemy positions with incredible accuracy. Yet even their firepower couldn't cover every angle. The reinforcements adapted, ducking into cover and returning fire, forcing Lily to twist the Apache in ways most pilots would avoid. The canyon behind them had become a memory, the desert ahead an obstacle course of deadly intent. Lily's mind raced. She needed to draw the reinforcements into a trap while keeping Sparks safe. She spotted a ridge ahead, jagged and treacherous, but offering a narrow corridor that could funnel the enemy's advance. "Hold tight," she shouted. The Apache dipped sharply, banking into the corridor. Dust and debris roared past, and enemy fire ricocheted off rocks, forcing soldiers to take cover. Sparks gripped the interior, knuckles white, adrenaline coursing through him like electricity. Above, the F-22s coordinated with Lily circling in tight formation. Hawk's voice was urgent, precise. "Falcon-Six, we're marking targets. Suppressive fire on your left. Move right." She twisted the Apache in response, the machine responding like a living extension of her body. The rotor blades hummed like a predator stalking its prey, sand and dust swirling in a chaotic dance. Every soldier caught in the corridor's funnel was at the mercy of the F-22's precise gunfire, cutting swaths through enemy formations. Sparks couldn't believe his eyes. This is insane," he whispered. How are you even?" "I don't have time to explain," Lily snapped, eyes forward, scanning the horizon for the next threat. Her fingers moved over the controls with a mechanical grace, instinct and knowledge fused into one deadly precision. "Just hang on." The reinforcements surged again, trying to break through the narrow corridor. Lily tilted the Apache sharply, unleashing a barrage of suppressive fire while simultaneously banking to avoid sniper positions. Sparks' stomach lurched as rocks and sand whipped past him, one strike nearly clipping the cabin. Above, Hawk muttered under his breath, awe and fear mingling in his tone. "No pilot I've ever seen, not even in the simulators, could handle this. She's rewriting the rules of engagement." Viper's jaw was tight behind his visor. "And she's saving that pilot, against impossible odds. I can't even process it." Lily's focus never wavered. The reinforcements were smart, relentless, but the corridor had given her an advantage. She banked the Apache again, forcing a group of enemy soldiers into the open where Hawk's F-22s strafed them with deadly precision. Another wave attempted to flank from the left, and Lily twisted, using every ounce of her skill to avoid direct fire while keeping Sparks safe. Sparks looked around in disbelief. "WWE might actually make it," he gasped. I can't believe this." "Don't believe it. Survive it," Lily shot back, eyes scanning the horizon for the next threat. She banked the Apache once more, forcing another group of reinforcements into the kill zone created by the F-22s. Dust and smoke roiled in the desert air, tracer rounds cutting streaks of fire across the sunlit sky. The reinforcements faltered, realizing the Apache and the F-22s were a coordinated force too lethal to engage directly. Lily saw the opportunity and pushed forward, accelerating into open desert. Sparks clung to the cabin interior, eyes wide, adrenaline still coursing, heart hammering. Behind them, the canyon was a chaos of dust, gunfire, and bodies, but ahead, the horizon opened. Lily's mind calculated one final maneuver, a sharp rise over a dune that would break the enemy's line of sight and give them breathing room. She banked, accelerated, and with a surge of power, the Apache climbed, rotors slicing the air like blades. The reinforcements were forced to scatter, unable to follow without exposing themselves. Hawk's voice was calm now, tinged with respect and awe. "Falcon-Six, you did it. We've cleared the path." Sparks slumped against the cabin wall, gasping for air. I don't even know how to thank you," he whispered, voice trembling. You saved my life." Lily didn't respond. She was already scanning the desert ahead, vigilant. One rescue had been successful, but the mission wasn't over. Enemy forces still lurked, waiting for the next opportunity. And Falcon-Six knew one thing for certain: she would not let them take the initiative. The radio crackled again, tension rising. "Falcon-Six, you've got incoming contacts. Multiple hostiles approaching fast. Coordinates on your HUD." Lily's jaw tightened. "Copy that," she muttered, adrenaline surging once more. "Let's see if they can keep up." The Apache surged forward into the desert sun, dust trailing like a storm behind it. Above, the F-22s roared, engines screaming in unison, ready to cover her next move. But ahead, danger awaited, and the desert had not yet finished testing Falcon-Six. The desert stretched endlessly, heat waves shimmering in the distance, but the illusion of calm was shattered by the rumble of approaching enemy vehicles and foot soldiers. Dust spiraled violently from their advance, tracer rounds cutting across the air like deadly arcs of lightning. Lily, Falcon-Six. Martinez tightened her grip on the Apache's controls, her knuckles white. Sparks clung to the cabin, heart pounding, trying to steady his breathing as the rotors' roar filled his ears. Above, the F-22s hovered like predators. Major Hawk Reynolds and Lieutenant Viper Lynn scanned the desert floor, weapons primed, but fully aware that the ultimate engagement was in Falcon-Six's hands. She had already outmaneuvered snipers, renegade troops, and reinforced enemy lines with the precision of a seasoned combat pilot. Now, the open desert demanded full use of every skill, every ounce of courage she possessed. "They're closing fast," Viper's voice crackled over the comm. "We're at the limit of our engagement range. You'll need to draw them into kill zones." "I've got it," Lily replied, eyes narrowing, scanning the horizon. Her instincts were razor-sharp. The Apache responded like a living extension of her body, every tilt and bank precise, calculated, deadly. Sparks watched her in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a mechanic, someone who had spent years fixing machines, not piloting them in combat, was now orchestrating a desert battle like a war-hardened veteran. Enemy vehicles and soldiers surged forward, attempting to encircle them. Lily angled the Apache low, sending a cloud of sand and dust forward to obscure their path. She twisted the rotors sharply, dodging incoming fire while unleashing suppressive rounds from the helicopter's guns. Bullets ricocheted off the armor and sliced through sand clouds, but her control remained flawless, her focus absolute. Sparks gripped the interior handle, knuckles white. This is insane," he whispered, voice trembling. How are you doing this?" "I don't have time to explain," Lily snapped, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "Just hold on." The F-22s engaged now, strafing enemy vehicles that dared approach too closely. Hawk's precision was terrifying to behold, each shot calculated to funnel enemy forces toward Falcon-Six's carefully chosen paths. Dust and smoke curled in massive plumes, creating temporary cover, but every second brought new dangers. The enemy adapted quickly, splitting into smaller units, moving in unpredictable patterns to flank them from multiple angles. Lily banked the Apache sharply, forcing one squadron into a narrow depression in the desert, a natural funnel she could exploit. The helicopter's guns erupted, sending suppressive fire downrange as Sparks peered out, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. The enemy hesitated, caught in the trap, but more were still approaching. Above, Hawk's voice was tense. Falcon-Six, they're regrouping. You'll need to create another kill zone quickly. I see it, Lily muttered, eyes scanning. She banked left, weaving between sand dunes, rotors slicing through the dusty haze. Another wave of infantry moved to intercept, and she released a precise burst of fire, forcing them toward the open where Hawk's F-22s could engage. Sparks clutched the cabin wall, feeling every twist and vibration. You're insane, he gasped. And brilliant. Lily didn't answer. She was already plotting the next move. The desert gave little margin for error. One mistake could expose Sparks to deadly gunfire, or worse, tip the Apache into the ground. She angled toward a cluster of dunes, using the terrain to shield them temporarily while lining up the next engagement. The reinforcements pressed forward relentlessly, their vehicles and troops moving in coordination. A sudden burst of gunfire clipped the Apache's wing, throwing a jolt through the cockpit. Sparks yelped, gripping the interior tighter. Lily's hands danced over the controls, compensating instantly, banking and tilting to maintain balance. Her mind worked faster than thought, calculating trajectory, enemy movement, and machine response simultaneously. Falcon-Six, you've got one narrow window to break their formation, Viper's voice urged. Engage now or they'll overrun you. I copy, she muttered, teeth gritted. She adjusted the throttle, banking sharply to sweep enemy infantry into a narrow canyon-like depression, then unleashed a stream of suppressive fire. The enemy scrambled for cover, but the F-22s rained precision fire from above, cutting a swath through the desert, driving them back. Sparks' eyes darted around in disbelief. I can't believe this is happening, he gasped. Believe it, survive it, Lily snapped, eyes locked forward, scanning for the next threat. She twisted the Apache again, narrowly avoiding a vehicle that had attempted a flanking maneuver. The rotors hummed like a predator stalking its prey, and every motion was perfect, fluid, lethal. The reinforcements regrouped, realizing the Apache and the F-22s were coordinated far too effectively for a direct attack. But they weren't giving up. More vehicles and troops surged, trying to close in from the horizon, forcing Lily to execute another daring maneuver. A steep dive between two dunes, rotors narrowly missing jagged sand ridges. Sparks felt his stomach lurch, but he clung on, witnessing the impossible in motion. Hawk's voice crackled urgently. Falcon-Six, you've got a gap ahead, use it to break their advance. Lily angled the Apache, rotors whipping up sand and debris, guns raining fire, and forced the enemy into the funnel she had prepared. One group of infantry froze in confusion, another scrambled under fire. Sparks couldn't speak, overwhelmed by fear and amazement. But the desert was not done testing them. From the far horizon, dust clouds indicated new enemy vehicles, armored and faster, moving to intercept. Lily's eyes narrowed. Incoming, she muttered. Her hands tightened on the controls, every nerve alive with anticipation. The F-22s responded instantly, strafing the advancing vehicles, but their ammo was limited and engagement windows were narrow. Hawk's voice was tense. Falcon-Six, you're going to have to maneuver through them. There's no cover for long. Sparks swallowed hard. We can't make it through. Yes, we can, Lily replied, calm but resolute. She banked, tilted, and accelerated the Apache toward the advancing armored vehicles, calculating every twist and dip to avoid fire while keeping Sparks safe. Every move was a gamble, but one she was willing to take. The enemy fired, tracer rounds slicing past them, ricocheting off rocks and sand. Lily twisted the Apache, releasing bursts of suppressive fire, forcing the enemy to scatter. Sparks clung tightly, adrenaline coursing, heart hammering. For a suspended moment, the desert fell silent, an unnatural pause as if the world were holding its breath. Then, the enemy regrouped, advancing with renewed determination. Lily's eyes hardened. The final confrontation was imminent. Falcon-Six, Hawk said quietly, awe in his tone. You've already done the impossible, But this is the end game. Lily didn't answer. Her eyes were on the horizon, on the armored vehicles closing fast on the endless desert. One final maneuver would decide everything, survival or catastrophe. The Apache surged forward, rotors slicing the air, guns firing, sand and dust whipping around them. Sparks felt the full force of the desert battle, but one thought echoed in his mind. He was alive, and it was all because of her. And Falcon-Six knew it too. The horizon loomed, armored vehicles approaching, enemy reinforcements relentless, and the desert stretched out like a stage for one final, deadly act. The desert sun blazed overhead, heat waves distorting the horizon, but there was no time to notice. Lily Falcon-Six, Martinez's eyes were locked on the approaching armored vehicles, enemy reinforcements closing fast. Sparks clung to the cabin, knuckles white, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Every instinct told him this was the endgame. Every second could be fatal. Falcon-Six, Hawk's voice crackled over the comm, tense but precise. You've got one final corridor. You make it through and we can break their formation. Miss it and they'll cut you off. I see it, Lily replied, jaw tight. The Apache's rotors whined as she banked sharply, kicking up sand and dust that blinded the advancing enemy. Every movement of the helicopter was calculated, precise, a deadly ballet of metal, air, and instinct. Sparks felt his stomach drop as the Apache dipped into a narrow dune corridor, bullets ricocheting past, sand exploding like fireworks around them. The F-22s roared overhead, engines screaming, precision fire cutting swaths through the approaching reinforcements. Hawk and Viper coordinated silently, marking targets, keeping the enemy pinned just long enough for Lily to navigate the corridor. But even their superior air power couldn't cover every angle. The ground was unpredictable, the enemy relentless, and one mistake could end everything. Sparks swallowed hard, eyes wide. We're actually doing it. His voice trailed off as a bullet ricocheted off the cabin near his shoulder. Yes, but hold on, Lily snapped. Her hands flew over the controls, twisting and banking the Apache with precision that defied belief. Years of maintaining machines had given her an almost instinctive understanding of the helicopter's responses. Now, that knowledge kept them alive under fire. The first armored vehicle surged forward, guns blazing. Lily tilted the Apache sharply, dodging the line of fire, then unleashed a precise stream of suppressive rounds from the helicopter's guns. Sparks ducked instinctively, sand and dust filling his vision. The vehicle's advance stalled, soldiers scrambling to take cover. Above, Hawk's voice was taut with urgency. Falcon-Six, the second wave is closing fast. Use the dune funnel. Lily banked, using the dunes as natural shields. She pushed the Apache low, skimming the desert surface, rotors slicing through the haze as bullets ricocheted and tracer rounds lit the air. Sparks, heart pounded in his chest. He had never witnessed anything like this. A mechanic guiding a helicopter through a deadly battlefield with the precision of a seasoned combat pilot. But the enemy adapted quickly, splitting into multiple groups, flanking from the left and right. Lily's mind raced, calculating trajectories, angles, and velocity. Every maneuver was critical. Every second counted. She released another burst of fire, forcing the left flank into a narrow depression where Hawk's F-22s could engage. Sparks clung to the cabin, eyes wide, breath coming in ragged gasps. You're insane," he whispered. "And brilliant." Lily didn't answer. Her focus was absolute. One more maneuver, one final push, and they could break through. She angled the Apache sharply toward the right, dodging a barrage of fire from the remaining vehicles. The rotors hummed like a predator, blades cutting through the air, sand, and dust. The final armored vehicle surged ahead, guns aimed. Lily banked violently, dodging a hail of bullets that struck mere inches from the Apache's fuselage. Sparks gasped, gripping the interior, stomach lurching. The F-22s strafed the vehicle from above, forcing the soldiers inside to retreat and giving her a narrow escape path. "Hold on, Sparks. Almost there," Lily shouted, teeth gritted. She twisted the Apache into the narrow dune corridor, rotors scraping close to jagged sand ridges but maintaining just enough clearance to avoid catastrophe. The enemy hesitated, caught off guard by the speed, audacity, and precision of her maneuvers. Sparks felt the full force of the rotors, sand and debris stinging his face, heart hammering. He had never experienced terror and awe in such equal measure. Every instinct screamed at him to duck, but he couldn't look away. The helicopter moved with a fluidity that was almost impossible, dodging gunfire, armored vehicles, and obstacles like it had a mind of its own. Above, Hawk and Viper continued their suppression. Hawk's voice was tight, edged with awe. "Falcon-Six, you're pulling this off, against impossible odds." "I know," Lily muttered, jaw tight, eyes scanning the corridor ahead. She banked sharply to the left, dodging another burst of fire. Sparks nearly lost his balance but held on, heart pounding, sweat stinging his eyes. The Apache surged forward, every second bringing them closer to open desert, to safety, to victory. The remaining enemy soldiers scrambled to reposition, but the corridor funneled them into a perfect kill zone. The F-22s unleashed their final precision strikes, cutting through armored vehicles and infantry, forcing them back. Lily's hands never wavered, every movement flawless, every calculation exact. And then the moment came. The corridor widened. Open desert stretched ahead. No more enemy immediately blocking their path. Lily banked, lifted the Apache, and accelerated, leaving dust, debris, and chaos behind. Sparks slumped against the cabin, shaking, unable to believe what had just happened. Above, Hawk exhaled, voice tight with awe. "She did it. She actually did it." Viper nodded silently, eyes fixed on the Apache disappearing toward the horizon. "We underestimated her big time." Sparks turned to Lily, still gripping the interior. I don't even know how to thank you," he whispered. You saved my life." Lily allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You just survive," she said, voice calm but tired. "That's enough." The F-22s stayed above for a moment, ensuring no reinforcements pursued. Then, they banked and returned to base, leaving Falcon-Six and Sparks alone in the vast desert. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of the Apache's rotors and the distant wind across sand dunes. For a long moment, Sparks simply stared at her. I can't believe it," he said. "A mechanic, you're a legend." Lily shook her head, eyes scanning the horizon. "I'm just someone who knows machines and people," she said softly. "And sometimes, knowing both is the difference between life and death." The desert stretched endlessly ahead, but for the first time since the canyon they could breathe. The battle was over. The mission succeeded. Sparks was alive, the reinforcements defeated, and the impossible had been made possible. Above, the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the desert in hues of gold and crimson. Falcon-Six guided the Apache steadily toward safety, rotors slicing through the air like blades of determination. Behind them, the desert returned to calm, but the story of that day, the courage, the skill, the defiance of impossible odds, would echo far beyond the sands. And as they flew toward the distant mountains, Sparks finally dared to ask, voice trembling with awe, "Falcon-Six, how did you do it?" Lily glanced at him briefly, a small smile playing across her lips. "Because I had to," she said, eyes forward, hands steady on the controls. "And because giving up was never an option." The Apache roared across the desert, carrying them home, a symbol of courage, skill, and the extraordinary power of determination.